The underground laboratory deep beneath the mountains of Korea hummed with energy. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim wiped sweat from his forehead as he stared at the impossible sight before him. The dark matter containment field flickered and danced, bending, the very air around it into strange shapes. This can't be right, he whispered to himself. For 3 years he had been trying to capture dark matter. Every scientist on Earth said it was impossible. Dark matter was invisible, untouchable, and made up most of the universe. But here it was, trapped in his machine, like a wild animal, in a cage. The heavy metal door behind him opened with a loud clank. Yoonji Park, his research partner, walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She took one look at the swirling field and dropped both cups. Hot coffee splashed across the concrete floor. "Hyunwoo," she said slowly, "please tell me that's not what I think it is." He nodded, unable to speak. The dark matter field pulsed like a heartbeat. Every pulse made the lights flicker and sent shivers through the thick concrete walls. Yoonji had been a military engineer before becoming a scientist. She understood weapons and war in ways that Hyunwoo never could. Her eyes went wide as she realized what they had discovered. "Do you know what this means?" she asked. "If we can control dark matter, we can bend space itself. We could build ships that phase through solid objects, weapons that ignore all armor. We could change everything," Hyunwoo finished. They spent the next 6 hours running tests. The dark matter responded to their commands like trained soldiers. It could become solid or liquid. It could pass through walls or stop bullets. Most amazing of all, it could fold space, making distances shorter or longer. 3 days later, Admiral Dongmin Lee arrived at their secret facility. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been watching the skies for 20 years, waiting for the day when Earth would no longer be alone. "Show me," he said simply. Hyunwoo activated the machine. A sphere of dark matter appeared in the air. With careful movements of his hands, he made it dance through the room. The sphere passed through the metal table, through the concrete wall, and back again. When he commanded it, the sphere became solid enough to lift heavy equipment. "Admiral," Lee watched in silence. Finally, he spoke. "How long have you known that we're not alone in the universe?" The question surprised both scientists. Yoonji answered first. "We've always suspected." "Suspected is not knowing," the Admiral cut her off. "We've been listening to alien radio signals for 30 years. We've tracked their ships moving between star systems, and now their fleets are heading toward our sector of space." The room fell silent except for the humming of machines. Hyunwoo felt his legs grow weak. "How long do we have?" 5 years, maybe 6, Admiral Lee replied. "They call themselves the Hegemony Alliance. They've conquered every species they've encountered. Their message is always the same: surrender or die." He pulled out a tablet and showed them recordings. Alien voices speaking in strange languages, star maps showing the movement of massive fleets, pictures of dead worlds that had refused to surrender. "Every species they've met has used normal technology," the Admiral continued. "Chemical rockets, nuclear power, metal ships. They have weapons designed to fight such things. But this," he pointed at the dark matter field, "this is something completely new." Yoonji's military mind was already working. How many ships do they have? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands, and we have nothing that can stop them. Until now. Admiral Lee looked directly at Hyunwoo. "Dr. Kim, I'm authorizing Project Shadowblade. You now have unlimited funding and the full support of Earth's governments." The next months passed in a blur of activity. Hyunwoo found himself leading a team of the best scientists and engineers on Earth. Yoonji became his second in command, translating his theories into practical designs. Captain Ji-hoon Choi joined the project in month 4. He was young for a captain, but he understood space combat better than anyone. He had been fighting pirates and smugglers in the outer system for 10 years. "The key is surprise," he told the team during their first meeting. "If the aliens know what we can do, they'll find ways to fight us. But if our ships can appear from nowhere and strike from impossible angles..." So Young-han, the project's chief engineer, raised her hand. "The dark matter engines are ready for testing, but we need to know how much power they can handle. They built the first prototype in Earth's moon. It was small, only big enough for a crew of 12. But when they activated the dark matter drive, something wonderful happened. The ship simply vanished. For 30 seconds, it existed outside normal space. The crew could see everything around them, but nothing could see them. When they reappeared, they were 1,000,000 kilometers away from where they started. Impossible, breathed Dr. So Young. According to physics, this shouldn't work. Hyunwoo smiled. According to old physics, we're writing new rules now. The tests continued. They learned that dark matter ships could phase through solid objects. They could become invisible to all sensors. They could travel faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. But the most important discovery came when they tested the weapons. Yoonji had designed cannons that fired concentrated dark matter. When these hit a target, the dark matter didn't just explode. It made the target's own atoms forget how to hold together. They tested it on an old asteroid. The dark matter beam touched it for just 1 second. The entire asteroid, 3 kilometers wide, simply fell apart into dust. Captain Choi watched the test with growing excitement. How many ships can we build? Admiral Lee had been asking the same question. 12, he replied. We can build 12 ships in secret. More than that, and the aliens might notice. 12 ships against thousands? So Young looked worried. 12 ships that can do the impossible, Yoonji corrected. 12 ships that can be everywhere and nowhere. 12 ships with weapons that ignore all defenses. As the first year of the project ended, Hyunwoo stood in the observation deck of the moon facility. Far below, construction had begun on humanity's first dark matter warship. It looked nothing like the metal ships in Earth's Navy. This ship seemed to bend light around itself, making it hard to look at directly. Soon, the aliens would arrive, expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they would face something that should not exist. Humans with the power to walk through walls and strike from the void itself. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. 3 years had passed since the discovery. Hidden shipyards floated in the dark space behind Jupiter's moons. Director Minho Yang watched as the final dark matter warship took shape. 12 vessels, each one a masterpiece of impossible technology. 3 ships looked like black ghosts floating in space. Their hulls seemed to absorb light, making them hard to see even when they were right in front of you. Each ship carried a crew of 200, Earth's finest soldiers and pilots. Commander Yoo-Jin Kang stood on the bridge of her ship, the Shadow Strike. She had been chosen to lead the 3rd Squadron because she understood the dark matter systems better than anyone except Dr. Hyunwoo himself. Her crew had been training for 2 years, learning to fight in ways that no human had ever fought before. Phase test in 30 seconds, announced Lieutenant Jae Sung-oh from his position at the air weapons station. He was young but deadly accurate with the dark matter cannons. All stations ready, Yoo-Jin replied. Beginning phase sequence. The ship shimmered and became transparent. For the crew inside, everything looked normal. But to outside observers, the Shadow Strike had simply vanished from existence. They were now flying through what the scientists called dark space, a place between the real world and nothingness. In dark space, the ship could pass through planets, stars, even black holes without taking damage. More importantly, no sensor in the known galaxy could detect them. While the human fleet prepared in secret, alien scouts had reached the outer edge of Earth's solar system. Fleet Commander Thalmorax of the Sectar species studied the readings from his ship's long-range sensors. The Sectar looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. They had been conquering worlds for the Hegemony Alliance for 300 years. To them, every new species was just another group of primitives to be enslaved. What do we know about this Earth planet? Thalmorax asked his intelligence officer. Chemical rockets, nuclear weapons, basic metal spacecraft, came the reply. Standard primitive technology. They have approximately 12 billion inhabitants across their homeworld and 3 small colonies. Thalmorax laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. 12 billion slaves for the mining worlds. The Hegemony Council will be pleased. His ship, along with 50 other scout vessels, had been watching Earth for 6 months. They had seen the human ships flying between planets, Slow, clumsy things that used chemical fuel and took months to travel short distances. What they had not seen were the dark matter warships. Pilot Hyewan Lim had been flying reconnaissance missions for 2 years, always in dark space, always invisible. Her ship, Ghostwalker, could fly right through the alien vessels without being detected. She had counted their numbers, studied their weapons, and learned their weaknesses. The aliens were powerful, but they fought in predictable ways. Their ships were heavily armored but slow. Their weapons were devastating but needed time to charge. Most importantly, she reported to Admiral Dongmin Lee, they have never encountered an enemy that can phase through solid matter. Their entire battle doctrine assumes that ships must fly around obstacles. The alien scouts finally sent their report to the main hegemony fleet. Supreme Admiral Vexathara received the message while sitting on the bridge of her flagship Dominion. She belonged to the hegemony's ruling species, the Arcani, tall, graceful beings with 4 arms and silver skin. Another primitive world, she said to her staff officers. Deploy standard conquest protocol. 500 ships should be more than sufficient. The hegemony had used this strategy 1,000 times. Send an overwhelming force, demand immediate surrender, and then occupy the planet. Most species gave up without firing a shot when they saw the size of the invasion fleet. Back at the hidden shipyards, the final preparations were complete. Captain Ji-hoon Choi walked through the corridors of his flagship, Shadowblade. The ship was 300 meters long but somehow felt larger inside than outside. Dark matter technology bent space in useful ways. His crew was ready. They had trained in simulators, practiced with real alien ship hulks, and learned to think in 4 dimensions. Normal human tactics involved moving in straight lines and shooting at targets you could see. Dark matter tactics involved appearing inside enemy formations and striking from impossible angles. Engineer So Young-han made final checks on the dark matter engines. Each ship could phase in and out of normal space instantly. They could become solid to fire weapons, then phase out, before return fire could hit them. The beauty of it, she explained to a group of new crew members, is that we're not just invisible, we're untouchable. Energy weapons pass right through us. Missiles can't track what doesn't exist. Even if they manage to hit us while we're solid, we can phase out and let their shots pass harmlessly through empty space. The dark matter cannons were equally revolutionary. Instead of firing energy or physical projectiles, they fired concentrated nothingness. When dark matter hit a target, it didn't explode. It made the target's molecular bonds forget how to work. Chief Scientist Kyung-Soo Nam had spent months testing the weapons. A single hit from a dark matter cannon will cause a chain reaction, he reported. The target's own atoms will tear themselves apart. It's not just destruction, it's undoing. Intelligence Officer Tae-hyun Park monitored alien communications from his station deep inside Earth's moon. The messages were becoming more frequent and more urgent. The main hegemony fleet was moving. They're coming, he announced during the daily briefing. 500 ships, maybe more. They'll arrive in approximately 6 months. Admiral Lee studied the tactical displays. 12 human ships against 500 alien vessels. By normal, military thinking, it would be a massacre. But these were not normal times. The element of surprise will only last for the first few minutes, he told his commanders. After that, they'll know we exist. But they won't understand how we work. Commander Yujin Kang raised her hand. What about their backup fleets? If we destroy this invasion force, won't they send more? They will, the Admiral agreed. But by then we'll have more ships. And more importantly, we'll have sent a message to the galaxy. Humans cannot be conquered. The months passed quickly. Final systems tests, crew training, weapons practice. The dark matter warships ran through simulation after simulation, preparing for every possible scenario. But the most important preparation was mental. The crews had to learn to think differently. They were no longer just soldiers or pilots. They were ghosts with the power to reach through walls and touch their enemies' hearts. Colonel Woojin Kim led the Special Forces units that would board enemy ships. His soldiers had been trained to phase through hull armor and appear inside enemy vessels. They could walk through walls, ignore force fields, and strike targets that thought themselves completely protected. Remember, he told his troops, we're not just fighting for Earth. Every species in the galaxy is watching even if they don't know it yet. We're showing them that freedom is possible. As the alien fleet approached the outer solar system, the 12 dark matter warships took their positions. They spread out through space, invisible and patient. Each ship was a loaded weapon pointed at the heart of galactic tyranny. Captain Choi sat in his command chair, feeling the dark matter engines humming beneath his feet. Soon the galaxy would learn that humans were not like other species. They were something new, something impossible, something that could walk through walls and strike from the void itself. The hegemony invasion fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system like a swarm of metal locusts. 500 ships of different shapes and sizes, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. Their formation stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Supreme Admiral Vexithara stood on the bridge of her flagship, Dominion. The massive vessel was 10 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Around her, officers from 6 different alien species worked at their stations. Long-range sensors confirmed the primitive fleet positions, reported Commander Tekfar, a 4-armed hegemony officer. 23 small vessels hiding behind their outer planet, standard defensive formation. Vexithara smiled with satisfaction. The humans were doing exactly what every other primitive species had done. They were trying to protect their homeworld by positioning their tiny fleet between the invaders and their planet. Pitiful, she said. Activate the broadcast system. Her message went out on all frequencies, translated into every known language. It was the same demand the hegemony had made to 1,000 worlds. Primitive inhabitants of Earth, you are now subjects of the Hegemony Alliance. Surrender immediately and your population will be relocated to work colonies. Resist, and your world will be reduced to ash. You have 1 standard hour to respond. In the command center beneath Earth's surface, Admiral Dongmin Lee received the message along with everyone else on the planet. He looked around at his staff officers, seeing fear and determination in their faces. Send our reply, he said calmly. The response went out on the same frequencies the aliens had used. But instead of words, it was a simple signal. The opening. Notes of an old Earth song about freedom. On the alien flagship, Vexithara listened to the strange musical sounds with confusion. What is the meaning of this? Unknown, Admiral, replied her communications officer. It appears to be some form of primitive artistic expression. Artistic expression? Vexithara's voice rose in anger. They respond to our ultimatum with noise. Prepare the fleet for attack. These primitives need to learn respect. But the humans had already begun their real response. 12 dark matter warships materialized around the alien fleet. They simply appeared from nothingness, as if space itself had decided to become solid. The alien sensors went wild, trying to understand what they were seeing. Captain Ji-Hoon Choi stood on the bridge of Shadowblade, now fully visible in normal space. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment for 3 years. All ships, this is Shadowblade, he broadcast on an open channel. Welcome to Earth's solar system. You are not invited guests. Leave now or face the consequences. On the alien flagship, chaos erupted. Officers shouted at each other in different languages. Sensors showed impossible readings. 12 small ships had somehow appeared in the middle of their formation without being detected. How did they get past our sensors? Vexithara demanded. Unknown, Admiral. Our equipment shows they were not there 30 seconds ago. Then they simply appeared. Fleet Commander Thal Morax, commanding one of the forward battle groups, laughed over the communication channel. 12 ships against 500? These humans are either very brave or very stupid. He never got to find out which. Commander Yujin Kang, aboard Shadow Strike, had been waiting for this moment. Her ship was positioned directly beside a massive hegemony battlecruiser. The alien vessel was 5 times larger than her ship and carried weapons that could level cities. Target locked, reported Lieutenant Jae Sung at weapons control. Dark matter cannon ready. Show them what impossible looks like, Yujin ordered. Shadow Strike began to phase. The ship became transparent, like a ghost in space. To the aliens watching, it looked like the human vessel was fading away. But instead of disappearing, it moved forward. The alien crew on the battlecruiser watched in horror as the human ship passed through their hull armor as if it wasn't there. Shadow Strike materialized inside their ship in the middle of their engine room. "Fire," Yujin commanded. The dark matter cannon fired from inside the alien ship. The beam didn't just destroy the engines, it made them forget how to exist. The chain reaction spread through the entire vessel in seconds. 5,000 alien soldiers died before they could even understand what had killed them. The massive battlecruiser simply came apart, its pieces drifting away like dust in the void. Across the hegemony formation, similar scenes played out. Human ships phased through shields and armor, appearing inside enemy vessels to fire their impossible weapons. Alien ships that had never been damaged in 100 battles simply dissolved into nothing. Supreme Admiral Vex Thera watched her fleet. Diane felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessels, full power to all weapons." The hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missile swarms, plasma cannons, enough firepower to destroy small moons. The space around the human ships erupted in explosions, but when the light faded, all 12 dark matter warships were still there, completely undamaged. "Impossible," whispered Vex Thera. "Nothing can survive that level of firepower." Captain Choi's voice came over the communication channel, calm and cold. "You're fighting the wrong war with the wrong weapons against the wrong enemy." Shadowblade phased out of normal space, just as a massive energy beam passed through the spot where it had been. The ship reappeared behind the alien flagship, its dark matter cannons charging. "This is for every species you've enslaved," Choi said. The beam struck Dominion in the engine section. The great ship, pride of the hegemony fleet, began to come, apart from the inside. But Choi had aimed carefully. The command section remained intact. As her flagship died around her, Vex Thera finally understood what she was facing. These humans weren't using advanced technology. They were using impossible technology. They could walk through walls, appear from nothing, and ignore the fundamental laws of physics. "Retreat," she ordered, her voice shaking. "All ships, immediate. Retreat." The surviving alien vessels turned and fled toward the edge of the solar system. They abandoned their dead, their pride, and their mission. For the first time in hegemony history, an invasion fleet had been defeated by an inferior force. But the humans weren't finished. Pilot Haiwan Lim, in her ship Ghostwalker, pursued the fleeing aliens. She phased in and out of normal space, appearing beside enemy ships just long enough to destroy them before vanishing again. Her ship was like a phantom, impossible to track or target. "Let some of them escape," Admiral Lee's voice came over the communication channel. "The galaxy needs to know what happened here." By the time the battle ended, less than 50 alien ships remained from the original 500. They limped away from Earth's solar system, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. In the aftermath, Captain Choi stood on the observation deck of Shadowblade, looking out at the debris field that had once been the mighty hegemony fleet. Pieces of alien ships drifted in the void, testimony to humanity's first victory. But he knew this was just the beginning. The hegemony would return with larger fleets, different tactics, and desperate fury. They would try to understand and counter the dark matter technology. They would fail, but they would try. Commander Yujin joined him at the observation window. "Think they got the message?" she asked. Choi smiled grimly. "Oh, they got it. The question is whether they'll be smart enough to listen." Far across space, in the halls of the Hegemony Council, emergency sessions were already beginning. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, the galaxy's greatest power had been humbled by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The age of easy conquest was over. Humanity had taken the stage, and the galaxy would never be the same. News of the impossible defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Intelligence Officer Taehyun Park sat in his monitoring station beneath Earth's surface, listening to panicked communications from dozens of alien worlds. The hegemony fleet is gone, he reported to Admiral Lee. Completely destroyed by just 12 human ships. The survivors are talking about ghost vessels and weapons that ignore reality. The alien survivors had brought back stories that made no sense to the hegemony's greatest minds. Ships that could walk through solid matter. Weapons that made targets simply stop existing. Humans who appeared inside sealed vessels as if the walls meant nothing. On the hegemony capital world, Supreme Chancellor Morthak called an emergency session of the ruling council. Representatives from 50 different species gathered in the Great Hall, their voices raised in fear and confusion. "Impossible," roared General Vakturin of the Sector military. "No species can develop technology that advanced without our knowledge. We've been watching these humans for years. They're primitives." Fleet Admiral Subin John, newly promoted to lead Earth's expanded dark matter fleet, smiled as she listened to the intercepted communications. The aliens were trying to make sense of something that broke their understanding of reality. "Let them panic," she told her staff officers. "Fear is our greatest weapon now." Earth's shipyards worked around the clock. The victory had given humanity breathing room, but Admiral Lee knew the hegemony would return with everything they had. 30 new dark matter warships were under construction, each one incorporating improvements learned from the first battle. Chief, Scientist Kyung-Soo Nam had been studying the wreckage of alien vessels. "Their technology is actually quite advanced," he reported, "but it's all based on normal physics. They use energy shields, armor plating, and conventional weapons. They've never encountered an enemy that could simply ignore those defenses." Meanwhile, the first liberation missions had begun. Colonel Woojin Kim led a strike force of 3 dark matter warships to the Helios system, where the hegemony had enslaved the native Zephyrian species for 200 years. The Zephyrians were small, peaceful beings who looked like walking flowers. They had been forced to work in the hegemony's crystal mines. Their beautiful cities turned into labor camps. "Remember," Colonel Kim told his Special Forces teams, "we're not just fighting the guards, we're showing the galaxy that the hegemony can be defeated." The 3 human ships appeared around the Helios orbital prison complex without warning. The hegemony guards were caught completely off guard as dark matter soldiers phased through the station walls and appeared in their control rooms. Captain H.A. Ryu, commanding Silent Thunder, watched as her soldiers moved through the prison like ghosts. They could walk through locked doors, ignore force fields, and appear behind guards who thought themselves safe. Within 2 hours, the entire complex was under human control. 10,000 Zephyrian slaves were freed from their underground prisons. They looked up at their liberators with wonder and hope. "The shadow humans," whispered one elderly Zephyrian. "The legend spoke of warriors who could walk between worlds. We thought they were just stories. But liberation missions were only the beginning." The hegemony's response came 3 months later, when a massive fleet appeared in the Centauri system. 2,000 ships, the largest force ever assembled in galactic history. Fleet Admiral Vexithara, her rank restored after the disaster at Earth, commanded the armada from a new flagship. This time, they had come prepared with new tactics and experimental weapons. "We've studied the human technology," she announced to her fleet commanders. "Their ships phase between dimensions. We'll use gravity wells to trap them in normal space, then overwhelm them with superior numbers." The human response was swift and decisive. Fleet Admiral Subin Jian led 40 dark matter warships against the hegemony armada. The battle lasted 6 hours and became known as the Massacre of Centauri. The gravity well generators worked for exactly 30 seconds. Then human engineers figured out how to phase through gravity itself. Dark matter warships appeared inside the massive alien vessels, their weapons turning proud dreadnoughts into expanding clouds of atoms. Commander Yujin Kang, now commanding a full squadron of dark matter ships, led the final assault on Vexithara's flagship. Her ships materialized around the alien command vessel like predators surrounding prey. "This is for every species you've enslaved," she broadcast. "This is for every world you've destroyed. This is the price of tyranny." The alien flagship tried to surrender, but it was too late. The dark matter weapons fired as one, and another symbol of hegemony power simply ceased to exist. By the time the battle ended, Less than 100 alien ships remained from the original 2,000. They fled into deep space, carrying with them the knowledge that the hegemony military was helpless against human technology. But the real victory came in the aftermath. Across the galaxy, enslaved species began to rise up against their hegemony masters. The humans had shown that the Empire could be defeated, and that was all the hope that millions of oppressed beings needed. Intelligence Officer Tae-hyun Park tracked the spreading rebellion through intercepted communications. Revolts on 47 worlds, he reported. The hegemony is losing control of entire sectors. The humans began appearing at these rebellion sites, not as conquerors, but as liberators. Captain H.R. Ryu's ship, Silent Thunder, arrived at the mining world of Kepler, Prime, just as the native crystallines were overwhelming their hegemony overseers. "We don't want your world," she told the crystalline leaders. "We want your freedom." The liberated species began calling them the Shadow Humans, warriors who could appear from nowhere, strike down tyranny, and vanish again. Stories spread from world to world, growing in the telling until humans seemed more like legends than reality. But the hegemony's scientists were working desperately to understand and counter the dark matter technology. They captured wreckage from destroyed human ships and tried to reverse engineer the impossible technology. Chief Scientist Kyung-Soo Nam monitored their efforts with amusement. "They're trying to build dark matter generators using normal matter physics," he reported. "It's like trying to paint with water or build a house with dreams." The breakthrough that the aliens sought would never come. Dark matter manipulation required more than advanced technology. It required a fundamental understanding of consciousness and reality that only human minds seemed capable of grasping. Dr. Hyun-Woo Kim, working in his expanded laboratory, had discovered why. "Human neural patterns are naturally quantum entangled," he explained to a gathering of scientists. "Our brains operate partially outside normal space-time. That's why we can control dark matter and other species can't." As the war entered its second year, the balance of power in the galaxy had completely shifted. The hegemony still controlled hundreds of worlds, but they were constantly under attack by their own former subjects, supported by human liberation. Fleets. Supreme Chancellor Morthak, leader of the Hegemony Council, finally admitted what everyone knew but no one dared say. "We cannot defeat them," he told his advisors. "Their technology is beyond our understanding. Their ships are untouchable. Their soldiers can walk through our strongest defenses." The hegemony began to fracture. Member species started making secret peace overtures to the humans. Entire fleets defected rather than face the impossible dark matter warships in battle. Fleet. Admiral Subin Jeon established the first human base outside the solar system, on the liberated world of New Geneva. It became a beacon of hope for oppressed species throughout the galaxy. "This is just the beginning," she told her officers as they watched former slaves learning to live free. "We're not just fighting a war, we're changing the entire galaxy." The age of the hegemony was ending. The age of human liberation had begun, and across the stars the word spread like wildfire. The shadow humans were coming, and freedom followed in their wake. 6 months after the massacre of Centauri, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Ambassador Seung-hwan Cho stood in what had once been the hegemony's greatest throne room, now renamed Liberation Station. Around him, representatives from over 200 formerly enslaved species gathered for the First Galactic Freedom Council. The hegemony surrender had come not through a final battle, but through the quiet collapse of a system built on fear. When fear turned to respect for the humans and hope for freedom, the empire simply fell apart. "Today marks a new beginning," Ambassador Cho announced to the assembled delegates, "not the beginning of human rule, but the beginning of galactic freedom." The species gathered in the Great Hall were as diverse as the galaxy itself. The flower-like Zephyrians sat beside the crystal-bodied minerals. Gaseous beings floated in special containers while energy creatures flickered in containment fields. All had been slaves. Now they were free. But not all former hegemony species had chosen surrender. Premier Insu Baek, Earth's newly elected leader, received daily reports about holdout worlds that still believed in the old ways of conquest and slavery. The Arcani supremacist faction has barricaded themselves in the Vega system, reported intelligence officer Tae-hyun Park. They claim they'll fight to the last rather than accept primitive human rule. Premier Beck sighed as she reviewed the reports. We're not trying to rule anyone. Why is that so hard to understand? Admiral Dongmin Lee, now Supreme Commander of the Coalition Forces, had been asking himself the same question. Power corrupts, Premier. The hegemony races held absolute power for 1,000 years. Some of them literally cannot imagine a galaxy where strength serves freedom instead of conquest. The solution came from an unexpected source. Captain Ji-hoon Choi, still commanding the legendary Shadow Blade, proposed a demonstration rather than another battle. Let me take a single ship to Vega, he requested. Not to fight, but to show them what we're really capable of. His plan was audacious even by human standards. Shadowblade would phase through the entire Arcani defense network, appear in their capital city, and then simply leave without firing a shot. 3 days later, Captain Choi materialized his ship in the center of the Arcani supremacist capital. The massive dark matter warship appeared in their main plaza, surrounded by thousands of terrified aliens who had never seen a human vessel up close. Choi activated the external speakers. Citizens of Vega Prime, he announced. I am Captain Ji-hoon Choi of the Earth vessel Shadowblade. I have come to deliver a message. Arcani soldiers surrounded the ship, pointing their most powerful weapons at its hull. Energy cannons, plasma rifles, molecular disruptors. Enough firepower to level a small city. Your weapons cannot harm us, Choi continued calmly. Your walls cannot stop us. Your armies cannot defeat us. But we are not your enemies unless you make us so. Choose wisely. The ship began to phase out of normal space, becoming transparent. The alien weapons fired, their beams passing harmlessly through the ghostly vessel. Within seconds, Shadowblade had completely vanished. The psychological effect was devastating. If humans could appear in their most secure locations at will, if their weapons could not even touch human ships, then resistance was not just futile, it was meaningless. Within a week, the Vega system surrendered unconditionally. But the humans' greatest challenge was not military, it was political. How do you govern a galaxy when you have the power to destroy any resistance? Fleet Admiral Subin Jian found herself in command of the most powerful military force in galactic history. 60 dark matter warships patrolled the trade routes, keeping peace through their mere existence. Pirates, warlords, and would-be conquerors all vanished at the first sign of human intervention. We're not peacekeepers, she explained to her senior officers during a strategy meeting. We're peace guarantors. Our job isn't to police the galaxy, it's to make sure no one else can. The strategy worked. Crime rates plummeted across civilized space. Wars between species became diplomatic negotiations once both sides realized that humans would intervene to protect the innocent. The galaxy experienced its first period of universal peace in recorded history. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim and Yoonji Park, the original discoverers of dark matter manipulation, found themselves working on projects that would have seemed like fantasy just a few years before. They were developing technology for exploration beyond the galaxy itself. Dark matter manipulation opens up possibilities we never dreamed of, Dr. Kim explained during a scientific presentation. We can build ships that exist partially outside our dimension. We can travel to other galaxies, other realities, other forms of existence entirely. The first transgalactic scout ship launched 6 months after the formation of the Freedom Coalition. Voidwalker, commanded by pilot Hai-Wan Lim, vanished from known space on a journey to the Andromeda Galaxy. Her mission was partly exploration and partly defensive. If there were other galactic empires out there, humanity needed to know about them before they discovered Earth. Back in the Milky Way, life had settled into a new pattern. Former hegemony worlds learned to govern themselves. Enslaved species built new civilizations based on cooperation rather than conquest, and humanity watched over it all with benevolent vigilance. Colonel Woojin Kim, now General Kim, established the Liberation Corps, a volunteer force of humans and aliens dedicated to helping oppressed beings anywhere in the galaxy. They specialized in impossible rescues and precision strikes against tyrants. Freedom isn't something you win once, he told new recruits. It's something you protect every day. The Corps became legendary throughout the galaxy. Stories spread of human soldiers who could walk through any prison, bypass any security system, and free anyone who needed freedom. Dictators on the furthest worlds woke up in cold sweats, wondering if the shadow humans were coming for them. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that power didn't have to corrupt. The humans could have ruled as absolute dictators, could have enslaved other species just as the hegemony had done. Instead, they chose to serve. Ambassador Seung-Hwan Cho often found himself explaining this to confused alien diplomats. "Why don't you simply conquer everyone?" asked a Keltorian representative during one diplomatic meeting. "You have the power. It would be easier than all this negotiation and compromise." "Because power without purpose is tyranny," Cho replied. "And tyranny always falls. We've seen it happen." As the first year of galactic freedom drew to a close, Captain Ji-hoon Choi stood once again on the observation deck of Shadowblade. But instead of looking out at debris from a battle, he watched peaceful trade ships moving between the stars. Commander Yujin Kang joined him, as she had after that first victory at Earth. "Think we did the right thing?" she asked. Choi smiled, remembering the fear in alien eyes when they first saw dark matter warships. Now those same species looked to the stars with hope instead of terror. "Ask me in 100 years, he replied, "when we see what kind of galaxy we've built." Far below on Liberation Station, a small ceremony was taking place. A group of young beings from dozens of different species were being sworn in as the first class of the Galactic Peacekeeping Academy. They would learn to work together, to solve problems with cooperation instead of conquest. Among them was a young Zephyrian who had been born in slavery and freed by human soldiers. She looked up at the stars with wonder and determination, dreaming of the day when she might help free others as she had been freed. The galaxy had learned a new truth. The strongest power was the power to choose restraint. Humanity had become not the galaxy's rulers, but its protectors. And in the end, that made all the difference. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, Void Walker pressed on toward distant stars, carrying humanity's message to whatever civilizations waited beyond the edge of known space. Freedom was possible. Hope was real. And the shadow humans were watching.